One of the biggest misconceptions I had in my business early on was that if I worked more hours, I would make more money. The fact of the matter is, to make more money, you need to work smarter, not harder. And today I'm going to give you a definition and why so many people fall into the trap of thinking more hours means more money so that you can avoid that and have your best year in real estate this year. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Listing Blueprint Podcast, the show for real estate agents who want to become top-tier listing agents and build a business driven by systems and not stress. I'm your host, Jeremy Reed, managing broker, 16-year realtor, and creator of the Listing Blueprint Fastest Path to Sold. Every episode, I break down one practical strategy or framework you can use to win more listing appointments, price with confidence, market with intention, and sell homes faster in any market. If you're ready to elevate your listing game and run your business like a pro, you're in the right place. Let's get started. So before we go into the answer, let's go into the problem, which I see a lot of other agents doing. I know it's not just me, which is thinking that working more hours will make you more money. Now, to understand where this comes from, you got to think back to what you observed as a child, because if you have this problem, you're probably like me, and you probably grew up in some kind of blue-collar family or had someone that you looked up to that was blue-collar. Because here's the problem. I came from a blue-collar background. I was in a blue-collar family, and I actually had a blue-collar job before I came into real estate. I had some sales background, but I was actually a welder, and I worked up north on the oil rigs before I came into real estate. And this was really puzzling for me. It took me almost 10 years to figure this out, because when I was in the oil field, the more hours you worked, the more money you made. It was clear. You get double the time and a half, you get double time. And I was used to working like 12, 13, 14-hour days because you're in camp, but there's nothing else to do. Now, go back a little further. I grew up in a blue-collar home, and my dad actually owned a logging business. So what I observed as a kid was hard work meant getting up at 4 a.m., leaving for work at 4:30, and you might be home at 6, you might be home at 7, you might be home at 8, and you might get a weekend off unless something goes wrong, and then you just work more hours through. Because it was a physical labor job. And physical labor jobs have a start and a finish. And the more hours you put in, the more money you make. We are in a probability business. And I want to really be clear on this, because working more hours does not mean more money unless you're focusing on the things that give you a higher probability for success. The other thing to remember is that we are in an emotional labor business. Meaning that it doesn't matter how many hours you can put in. It really has to do with how strong you are to emotionally be uncomfortable for periods of time, and how long you can sustain that so that you get the compounding effect of it actually making you more money. So I'll tell you how I learned this, okay? When I was first in the business and I had the team, I put in a lot of hours. But I also was trying to scale, and there was a lot of things I didn't want to do. So I fell into this by accident. So when I first hired my first assistant, what I wanted to do was focus on getting more business. And I knew the things that I wanted to do to make me more money. But I just felt like I was getting too busy with all the other stuff. So I hired my first assistant. What I said to my assistant was, I want to create some kind of structure with you where I'm going to basically give it 90 days. Because I remember I was terrified to hire my assistant at the time. But I said, I got 90 days to figure out how I'm going to pay you. In order for me to pay you, I need to focus solely on finding us more business. So what I need you to do is anything that remotely takes me away from 5 areas. And I'm going to share what those 5 areas are. The 5 things that actually make you money in this business, and they're the only 5, is working with buyers, showing houses, working them through, talking to them, meeting them, all those things. Working with sellers, listing homes, meeting listing appointments, talking to them, getting them on the market. Writing offers, those have to do with your buyer, negotiating offers, and prospecting and marketing. Those are it. And if you're not in one of those 5 quadrants, you're not making any money. The rest is busy work. Now, if you don't have an assistant, you do have to have busy work, but you have to create some kind of system where you can block out a bunch of that noise and focus on a certain period of time every single day being in those 5 quadrants. So with my assistant, what I said was, all right, here's what we're going to do. Anything that's not in those 5 quadrants, I want to come to you and say, I need you to do this. Now, what was nice about this hire was I'd gone through a few other assistants and I tried to train them from new. With this hire, I found someone that had experience and I paid them what they were worth, so I didn't have to train them. So they were kind of plug and play. And what I said was, I want you to take on everything. I want to be focused on those 5 things every single day. On top of that, I want you to help set me up for success. So we figured out our 5 days of the week and we said, this is what we're going to focus on. On Mondays, we're going to do I have a buyer for your home letters. I want you to mail out to areas that my buyers are interested in with I have a buyer letters. Tuesdays, I want it to be social media Tuesdays. I want you to set up all the social media posts, help me plan out the days, get everything done, so that it kind of runs on autopilot for the rest of the week. Wednesday, I want to focus on expired listings. Thursdays, for sale by owners. Fridays, just listed, just solds. And then what we're going to do is you're going to mail out those just listed, just solds on Fridays. And when I come back the following Monday, I want a list of all the numbers that you can find around the areas where you sent the I have a buyer for your home. So that when I come in that Monday, I'm calling the list from the week before. On Wednesday, I want the expired listings that you mailed to so I can follow up with a call. Thursdays, I want the first sale by owners. Fridays, I want the just listed, just sold. And I want these lists put out for me every single day right on my office so that when I get there, they're ready for me to just call. On top of that, when you go in my database, I want you to find me 10 people randomly every single day, and I want you to put them in my daily 10. Then when I come in, I know I've got my calls from the week before and I've got my daily 10. From there, I'll figure out any other leads I want to follow up. And that was what I did every single morning. And I stayed so focused on this. Like 9 a.m., I started this and I would call right through until it was done. Here's the crazy thing. During that time, by the time we got to the end of the 90 days, I was so focused on a 90-day window because I needed to pay for her because I wanted to keep this going, that I had actually created enough income above what I normally would do that I paid for her for an entire year. It was the most powerful 90 days. That was the year I grew my business. I doubled it, actually. Biggest thing I ever did was doubling my business because I got that right person in that seat and I focused solely on prospecting. Now, as the years went on, I got a little more complacent. I got to a point where I said, okay, I'm going to do the brokerage thing, but fast forward a little bit past that. So when I shut down the team and I bought into the brokerage, I did that for a little while. Then I came back into sales. When I came back into sales, I had a different focus. I didn't want to be the biggest. I just wanted to make a lot of money and work a little bit. That was kind of my goal. So I had young kids at the time, 3 and almost 1. And I was coming back into sales. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this a little different this time. So I set a goal. I worked with a coach at the time. And I said, I want to work 20 hours a week and make $500,000 a year. She's like, okay, well, we got to back engineer that. Now, I did the same thing. I found a really good assistant. I worked a really good structure with her. And this time I systematized again. And what I did was I focused on those 5. I got her to help set things up. I kickstarted again, did the 90 days. It worked. So if you're looking at hiring someone, I know there's a lot of different choices with the AI and transaction coordinators. But if you want to hire someone, that 90-day sprint will work for you. Worked again, got her set up. And for the next 2.5 years with that assistant, I consistently did that. I'd work 20 hours a week. I logged those times and I spent a lot of time with my family. But what was interesting is even during that time, my business would grow. The reason it would grow is that even though I was putting in such a small amount of time, I was still focused on prospecting. I would get in and I would get my calls. I'd get her to set my daily 10. I'd get her to do all those things. And even though at that time, honestly, it wasn't 2 hours, it's maybe 45 minutes a day, it happened every single day because I had nothing else to do. If I wasn't in appointments, I'd have these blocks. I'm like, oh, I should do something. I would call people. And again, it just grew. Now, here's where I learned this lesson. 2.5 years, when I parted ways with my assistant, I decided foolishly that I had this business figured out. And really, I had such a high price point that I was doing. You know what? I can sustain this. I can sustain this. I don't need an assistant. I can just be the rifle approach. I'll just do all the stuff myself. I'll work in the evenings, no big deal. It is a big deal because here's what happened. Immediately, not really realizing it, I had an entire full-time assistant job on top of my sales job. And I was back to 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week. And I felt like I was working really hard, but my income was declining. And it declined for another 2 years after that. That is not a great place to be because there's no growth in that. And here's what I kind of learned from it. When you get caught in busy work and you're working a lot of hours and you're doing the things that aren't the high dollar producing activities, you get tired. And then the last thing you're thinking about is the new business. It fades away. You get busy, you're not prospecting, you get a couple, things get slow and you're a great prospector, right? You can do it for 60 days, 30 days. As soon as you get busy, falls off. Doesn't happen anymore. Why? Because as soon as you get busier, there's more paperwork, there's more assistant stuff, and it's going to bog you back down. Now, if you haven't done this cycle, save yourself the pain. It doesn't work, because it was a massive decline in my overall business before I finally realized what was actually going on. Now, I started the structure again, got another assistant. Sure enough, my business is exploding again. And this time I'll never make the mistake. Now, I'm not saying you have to get an assistant, but what I'm saying is, whatever your structure is, you need to find a minimum 1 hour, probably 2 hours, every single day, Monday through Friday, where you're picking up the phone and you're having new conversations with new prospects and you're booking new listing appointments, buyer appointments, making more money. Because otherwise, you're going to get in a really hard spiral where you're going to feel like there's no consistency. You're going to feel like there's no backbone to what you're doing. You're going to feel like you're constantly resetting. Every 2-3 months, you're having to reset again because you get busy, then you slow, and you're going to be in that massive wave. And you're going to think that the business is inconsistent. You're going to think that it's hard. And what you're not going to realize, which it took me this experience to actually realize, is that consistency trumps everything. And the top producers, the ones that I talk to that are at the very top, they just have this understanding that if they're not finding new business, if there's not fresh water coming into their business is dying. And they discipline themselves every single day to be uncomfortable. So a couple tips I'm going to give you on this. Starting tomorrow, pick up the phone, even if it's 5. Make 5 calls to new people. Now, as soon as you sit down to start to do this, you're going to find there's all these different ways that your ego tries to hide from making these calls. People don't want to answer anymore. No one's going to answer. I can send a text. I can send an email. I want you to have voice-to-voice calls, okay? We connect with people differently when we have voice-to-voice calls. We pick up nuances. It's easier for us to pick up on something that's happening with them and ask the question, oh, is this your forever home or is this more of a right now home? Great question. No, I think it's just more of a right now home. Oh, if you were to move, when do you think that would be? I'm not really sure. What would you need to see? Like, what's your home lacking right now that the next home would, when it is the right time? These are questions that are a lot easier, that if you do it on text, they're very cold. And it's so much nicer to say, well, you know what? If you're thinking about making a move in the next 12 months, would it be helpful if we met for 20 minutes and just went over your options? So we could look at what buying a home in 2026 could look like. So we could look at what selling your home in 2026 could look at. Takes me 20 minutes. I give you all the information. Then you'll have the clarity to make a decision of whether it is the right year or it's not the right year. These all happen voice to voice. And here's the thing I noticed about that, because I fell into this trick as well. I was like, people are on social media. They want DMs. People text. People email. People don't want to be bothered with calls. You know what? If they don't want to be bothered with calls, they won't answer. And yeah, you're going to get some prospects that answer and they just are having a bad day and they get back. It's not as often as you think, but it will happen. That's where you can just be calm. It looks like I caught you a bad time. Would you like me to not call you again? Like, I don't want to make it. Is it just not at a good time now? Or would you prefer I just don't call you again? Don't call me again. Perfect. And then I move on. That's it. Water off a duck's back. So that's the worst case scenario. But it doesn't happen as much as you think. What you're going to find if you make these calls, you're going to find people are actually answering. Surprisingly, they're answering and they're calling back on voicemails, because I think right now, with the way technology is and how distant we are, people are getting back into wanting to connect with people and have these conversations. The other thing is, a lot of people have questions about real estate right now. There's a lot of people that are thinking about it. There's a lot of people that bought in 2021 that rushed to buy a home, that are coming up 5 years later and now they're thinking about moving. There's a lot of people that expired. There's a lot of opportunity. And take that 5 thing that I just said, pick 5 days, have a different theme each day, plan it the night before, know who your 15 contacts are that you're going to call, and get in and make the call. And I promise you that if you can have the emotional strength to be uncomfortable for those 2 hours, for you to post the content. Even if it's not perfect, just get it out there, put it online, do the stuff that makes you super uncomfortable, and know that this is what working hard looks like, and stay in that uncomfortable for a sustained period of time. You will see results. And the longer you do it consistently, the more it's going to grow. And the test is going to come when you get really busy and you start to think to yourself, oh, I'm too busy to make those calls. Make it sacred. Because if you learned anything from the story I gave today, it's that it doesn't matter what level you're at. The minute you get caught in busy work and working long hours without focusing on that 1 to 2 hours of very, very emotionally intensive, uncomfortable time that you know is going to make you more business, that's where you're going to fall into the trap of a declining business. That's where you're going to fall into the trap of burnout. So I hope that was helpful. Before I go out, there's something that was taught to me, and I want you to really understand this, because this will give you an idea of what this business is like and the rewards that could come from it. Now, when the price points were lower, when I first got in the business, year 3 in the business, Brian Buffini, who's a big trainer, you've probably heard of him. I took one of his trainings, and he said something that always stuck with me, that said, if you can give me 2 hours a day of pure prospecting time, interrupted, totally focused prospecting time. If you can do that for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and sustain that, you'll be a millionaire within 3 years. And it's more true now than it ever was before. So there's a big reward to be paid off. It's 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday. Take the challenge. If you can do it, email me. Let me know, because I promise you this. You do that for 3 months, you're going to notice a big difference. You do it for 6 months, you're going to blow up. You do that for 1 year, you're going to have your biggest year ever. All right, guys? Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.